Deep in the heart of the forest, a murky pond was home to two unlikely friends, Frog and Toad. They had spent many years together, sharing laughter, stories, and basking in the warmth of the sun. One night, a thick fog descended upon the pond, shrouding everything in an eerie silence. Frog and Toad felt uneasy, sensing that something was wrong. Suddenly, they heard a low growling sound, and a pair of glowing eyes appeared out of the mist. It was a monstrous toad, much larger and more terrifying than any they had ever seen before. It lunged at Frog with lightning speed, its powerful jaws closing around him and dragging him into the murky depths of the pond. Toad was left alone and trembling with fear, haunted by the memory of his friend's screams echoing through the forest. He knew he had to find a way to save him, so he dove into the water and swam deep into the pond, following the trail of bubbles left behind by the toad. He eventually came upon a dark and foreboding cave. Inside, he found Frog, his body twisted and contorted into a grotesque parody of his former self. The monstrous toad stood over him, cackling with glee. Toad was horrified by what he saw. The toad had turned Frog into a hideous creature, half frog and half toad, with bulging eyes and grotesque features. The toad had used dark magic to transform him, and Toad realized that he was next. The toad turned to Toad, its eyes gleaming with malevolence. "You are next," it croaked, before lunging at him with its powerful jaws. Toad fought back with all his might, but he was no match for the toad's strength. It dragged him under the water, and he felt himself being pulled into a dark and twisted realm. For what felt like an eternity, Toad was trapped in the toad's realm, consumed by fear and despair. He watched in horror as the toad used dark magic to transform innocent creatures into twisted and grotesque versions of themselves. Eventually, he managed to escape, but he was forever changed by his ordeal. He was consumed by a darkness that he could not shake, and he spent the rest of his days haunted by the memory of what had happened to his dear friend Frog. The forest was never the same after that night. Creatures whispered in hushed tones of the horrors that had befallen Frog and Toad, and none dared to venture into the murky pond after dark. The memory of the monstrous toad and the dark magic it had wielded would never fade, a dark and terrifying legend that would be passed down from generation to generation. Toad lived out his days alone, consumed by the darkness that had taken hold of him. He knew that the toad was still out there, waiting for its next victim, and he could not rest until it was destroyed. But he knew deep down that he would never be able to defeat it, and that the darkness would consume him in the end.